Built in 1950, the wheat silos have refused to go without a fight. The first attempt on Sunday to demolish the 34-metre structure proved unsuccessful when one of the silos broke away from the other three and sank into the ground. After investigations were carried out by engineers, demolishers decided to try again on Tuesday. Another failure, and the discovery the three remaining silos had pushed their bottom cones 4 metres into the ground. Undeterred, a third attempt was planned for today. And while 2 more fell, 1 was left standing.
Pretty disappointed. The cortex broke on the explosive when a part of the other silo come down, but we know now everything's safe and they're leaning in the right direction to go.
While some onlookers may view the saga as humorous, the developer says it's gone beyond a joke. An expensive exercise, the demolition bill has now reached $70,000. A $3.5 million shopping complex is planned for the site. Armed with a good luck charm, the developer says he's confident the remaining silo will fall within the next hour.
Most definitely. Have a lottery ticket on it.
Melinda Smith, NBN News.
Oh, look at him, Leggy, look. Oh, look, Leggy. Look at dust.
See you later, man.
The boisterous Curry crowd was silenced in the 7th minute when Steve Linnane became the first of many victims, re-injuring his left hand. He returned 10 minutes later, the first half marred by errors and penalties. Not surprisingly, the first try came through a mistake behind South's try line, the Bulldogs' Daryl Johnson pouncing on the scraps. South's reply was swift, Darren Ford's acceleration deceiving the Premiers, who led 6-4 at half-time. The niggle continued in the second term, but with the brute strength came the deft touch. Curry winger Darryl Williams' solo effort proving a match winner. A Linnane field goal gave Curry further breathing space, as did 2 late penalties by the wounded Phil Williams, who was sporting stitches in his head and mouth. He was one of several injury concerns, the captain playing down the damage to his arm.
I don't think it's anything serious, but it's just a bit of a jarring, so I hope I'll go to the physio on Monday and hopefully get it right for next week.
Held at the Old Bar Roadside Circuit, the championships attracted a strong field of competitors. Riders from across New South Wales, Canberra and Queensland travelled to Taree to compete, showing off some aggressive driving.
So we've got some of the top riders from all over the state.
Among them, Taree's own Ken Bisley. At just 16, he's been riding competitively since he was 4. He's already won several national titles in the junior ranks.
I'm riding a CR250 and a CR500.
Other top riders at today's event included current national champion Newcastle's Chris Watson and Steve Graham from Maitland. The Upper Arara Tennis Club has been open for 6 decades. Today, some of the original members watched from the sidelines as tennis great John Alexander played with top juniors in demonstration matches. The event marked the club's 60th anniversary. John Alexander says country tennis clubs have produced some of Australia's top players.
There's been a history in Australian tennis of our greatest players coming from country districts. In Rod Laver from Rockhampton, Roy Emerson from Blackbutt.
He says the focus has shifted back to training country players.
I think that's one of the shortcomings that's being addressed with our junior tennis program in Australia, that there is too much emphasis on the major population areas, and the major population areas aren't producing the top tennis players.
After heats yesterday, finalists were greeted by a choppy 1 metre wave at Newcastle Beach this morning. 6 girls contested the open final, Swansea High's Wiki Jones taking the title after the 25-minute decider. It was then her brother's turn, Tama qualifying in the 4-man final with fellow Swansea student Christian McCall, Rutherford's Mark Buchanan and Broadmeadows' Mark Rostrom. With a decisive win in the semi and victory in the 17s last year, McCall went into the final as favourite and was first to impress the judges. But Jones responded, a range of manoeuvres swaying the judges, who narrowly awarded him the Egan Surfboard Championship. Coupled with his victory in the regional titles, Jones will now start as one of the favourites in next Saturday's Rip Curl State Youth titles at Red Head, as will today's runner-up McCall, who is the top seed for the 2-day event. Missouri's bid to wrap up the premiership started well when Wayne Bailey found the back of the net from the spot after David Lowe was brought down. An Edgeworth free kick gave the home side the equaliser, Gorang Simic deceiving Missouri's defence. More problems at the back for the Premiers when a misjudged high ball gave Edgeworth a 2-1 lead. But Missouri rallied with 3 further goals, including another penalty in the second half, to win their 3rd successive premiership. Also celebrating today, university hockey player Peter Sweeney. The former state player notched up his 500th Newcastle first grade appearance with the clash against Souths. But despite the occasion, spent the pre-match hours as only a true club stalwart could, helping in the canteen. At 42 years young, Sweeney is an integral part of university's push for successive premierships. He began playing for the defunct Central Club in 1965, and retirement is a word he doesn't understand. Plans to continue?
Plans to continue for as long as humanly possible. My fitness level is quite good at the moment, and I'm not carrying any injuries. I've been very lucky in that regard.
After a strong fight back from a seemingly hopeless position against Canterbury yesterday, Jared McCracken's intercept cruelled any chance of a Knights victory at their last home appearance of the season. But further disappointment for the Knights was avoided this morning. Knights forwards Darren Tracy and Adam Muir told they wouldn't have to attend league headquarters in Sydney tonight after this tackle on Simon Gillies.
Adam Muir and Darren Tracy, as we expected, have both been cleared of the referee's report in relation to a tackle that occurred in the second half of the game.
While the Knights are now preparing for this Saturday's match against Cronulla, persistent rumours continue over who will be at the helm of first grade next year. Several names have been mentioned, none confirmed. The Knights board to hold a special meeting on Thursday night, the coaching position on the agenda. In the meantime, the club has refused to elaborate.
There is a process in place for the appointment of a first grade coach for 1995. We're on track with that process, maybe a couple of days behind, and we expect to be in a position to make some announcements shortly.
A full replay of yesterday's game against Canterbury on NBN tonight from 10:30.
The battle to secure Green Point as a park for the city of Lake Macquarie has been long and complex. With this signing last month, it was thought the site's future had finally been sealed. However, Macloys today cancelled the agreement, handing back $2 million received from council in return for the foreshore land.
Extremely disappointing that we have to do this today. I mean, Green Point's been off the news for a while, and it's a shame that this has flared up again. Unfortunately, it seems to be one of those projects that just keeps continuing in that vein.
Word of the crisis spread quickly, most councillors shocked by the move. What sparked the dispute was the deferral last night of a decision on whether to grant development approval for a single-storey dwelling on the land. Both Macloy and Council disagree as to whether there ever was a verbal agreement which would have seen development consent given for the house on Green Point. If the issue is to be resolved, then Mayor John Kilpatrick believes both parties must start trusting each other.
I think the sad part about the whole thing is there's such a lack of trust, I think, between the council and Macloys. You know, I'm one of those people that have said for ages that agreements are only as good as the people who sign them. I say that quite sincerely.
Council has 14 days to try to resolve the matter. If that doesn't happen, Macloys will go to Plan B.
The land is rural. We have some building rights, some very limited building rights on that land. We would exercise those rights and other rights such as the retirement village that we have development consent for.
It's the change from 1,600 to 2,000 metres that has attracted a quality field this year. Tyree Cup Day will feature a 9-race program from 12 o'clock. Locally owned and trained horse I Like a Beer is top weight in the Cup at 56.5 kilograms. It's run its last 3 races in Grafton, achieving 2 placings. But it'll be up against horses from Broadmeadow and Rose Hill vying for over $17,000 in prize money.
But I think the strongest opposition will come from the Newcastle trained horses. Max Lees has Crown Club in the race to be ridden by Glenn Boss, and Paul Perry has Sir Strike, 2 place getters in Sydney, and I'm sure they'll probably be favourites for the race.
The Race Club Secretary predicts the annual event will draw a large crowd. Fashions and giveaways will be part of the action, the carnival continuing on Saturday. Tracy Walsh, NBN News.
These are the original plans for the redevelopment of Newcastle's civic site proposed by the council's preferred tenderer, John Holland Constructions. The site, which includes the Frederick Ash building and this adjacent vacant block, would be turned into offices, retail and an open plaza.
We've been negotiating with John Holland to get to the stage where a contract could be executed by council, and that's continuing at the moment.
The developer wants to pull down the back part of the Frederick Ash building, but it was constructed at the turn of the century and has a permanent conservation order on it. The Heritage Council has asked Newcastle Civic Council to have the developer submit alternative plans. It wants the new sketches to retain all of the Frederick Ash building.
We're seeking to accommodate what those changes are, and we're still talking to them.
Newcastle City Council was last night briefed on the situation. The new sketches should be ready by October. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
Students from the Hunter, Central Coast and New England did battle in the kitchen today, chasing the Young Chef's Culinary Award. Each team was asked to prepare a special Asian meal for a family of 4, spending no more than $30.
We look at the presentation, the preparation and the presentation of the food, so the flavour, the texture. It has to look good, but it has to taste good as well.
Guyra Central High School from near Armidale chose to cook a Malaysian menu.
There's been a few disasters, but we've fixed them up.
Practice, though, makes perfect, and today they were in fine form. The skills students learned weren't confined to the kitchen.
We've learned a lot about Malaysia and the different festivals and that.
The winners of the regional competition will compete in the state final in Sydney.
Members of the Manning District Vietnam Veterans Association and the RSL sub-branch looked on as the flag was raised for their colleague. A ceremony was held in honour of 2nd Lieutenant Kerry Rinken, who served in the 5th Battalion Royal Australian Regiment. The soldier was conscripted to Vietnam in 1967 and killed in a mine explosion just 7 weeks later.
I worked at the 1st Australian Field Hospital in South Vietnam at Vung Tau, where Kerry was brought in, so it brings back special memories.
Bob Coombs claims recognition of Vietnam servicemen and women is long overdue and believes placing a plaque in the grounds of the school his friend attended is a fitting dedication. Tracy Walsh, NBN News. This advertisement has appeared in the latest issue of the Wingham Chronicle. It's a desperate attempt to bring a dog baiter to justice, with money offered as an incentive. Resident Bruce McCulloch warns his neighbours that their pets may be the next victims. Just over a week ago, his daughter's Rottweiler was poisoned while on his property.
Within a couple of hours after nightfall, we found her out the back. She'd been bleeding massively.
Mr McCulloch says the dog's death may have resulted from a personal vendetta or simply a sick-minded person. He says Tara posed no threat to the community, but he thinks it's no coincidence his cat and another close by have suffered broken jaws.
This one lives with a sheep and hasn't eaten it, lives with a little dog and hasn't eaten it, or 4 cats, and a little girl hasn't touched them.
While Mr McCulloch awaits a response to his advertisement, he has the support of local police.
We are treating it as a serious matter, considering the fact that some sort of a poison was placed into the yard quite recklessly. Particularly there was a toddler playing in the yard at the time.
The penalty for cruelty to animals is $4,000 or 1 year's imprisonment. Tracy Walsh, NBN News.
Archbishop Goodyear received a mayoral reception in Maitland, but he wanted to concentrate more on the plight of farmers than pomp. He says the church has a responsibility to lobby governments and banks to try and get a better deal for drought victims. An Anglican drought appeal started last week after the church realised how bad life on the land had become.
We became aware of folk who, I think they say, are asset rich but sometimes cash very poor, and finding it just difficult to put bare essentials on the table.
Archbishop Goodhue has also advocated a greater role by the church and the community in Australia's Republican debate.
I called recently for those engaged in the debate to let it move beyond a political issue, just as a political issue, and to really begin to involve people seriously in the debate.
Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
Several years ago, Robert Jones punctured his stomach with the handlebars of his bike in a motocross accident. It ended his motocross career. He began looking for a safer sport, the search ending in observed trial riding. Jones swapping speed for balance and patience on courses which produce any number of obstacles.
Vertical rocks, logs, creek beds, anything that's really difficult basically.
Points are lost when a competitor overbalances and is forced to ground his feet. But it's an act Jones has mastered quickly, finishing third in the national championships last year, qualifying him for the Australian team to compete in Spain.
I think we'll do very well. We should get in the top 10, and that'll be very good for Australia, considering it's the first team that's ever been sent.
A good performance could open the way for future individual competition. Jones is hopeful of gaining a contract in Europe, where the sport, unlike in Australia, enjoys immense popularity.
These are some of the 143 miners sacked by Chain Valley Colliery Management after going on strike on Monday over a safety issue. The dismissal described as an act by an insensitive company.
They've even issued dismissal notices to people that were actually on sick leave and weren't involved in the dispute. People on long service leave that weren't even on the mine site have been issued dismissal notices by private courier to their home. Now, there's no compassion in that.
The dispute centred on bathhouse facilities, but miners say problems over changes in such matters as manning levels and bonus payments have brewed since Coal Operations Australia bought the colliery in April. While the company today agreed to talk with unions, its managing director claims if the men had been reasonable and had a go, they would have seen we're not unreasonable, but they didn't have a go.
If anyone overreacted, it was the company, to turn around and arbitrarily dismiss everybody. It's unheard of, really.
Today's meeting raised the question of the company's true intention of keeping the mine open. The district executive of the Miners' Union will meet over the weekend to discuss the situation and plan the next step in its battle with the company, a battle which could see the involvement of miners around the nation.
I don't believe that it's fair to the coal mining industry and a whole in Australia to allow a small-time operator such as Tony Harrison put the rest of the coal mining industry at risk. I would not like to see it go that way, but it's certainly, I'd have to be honest with you to say that yes, it has got the potential for industrial disputes.
On Wednesday, the company advertised for new employees. The miners begin an indefinite picket line at the colliery next Monday and will hold a mass meeting on Wednesday. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
To the American universities of excellence and our companies for cycle technology.
Needing to win 5 of 8 games to qualify for the playoffs, the Falcons quickly opened up a 10-point margin. That was quickly eroded with uncharacteristic errors coupled with the Cannons' willingness to take the outside shots, giving the visitors a 41-36 half-time lead. But for captain Terry Dozier's performance, the Cannons' advantage would have been greater. Scoreless in the first half, Falcons guard Derek Rucker made an immediate impact on the match in the third quarter. From that point, Rucker dominated the game, finishing with 23 points, 10 assists and 8 rebounds. His prowess was infectious, the Falcons lifting in all departments, not letting anything get in their way, although Justin Withers did his best to upset Dozier, who finished with a match-high 29 points. Newcastle was also assisted by other results last night. The Townsville Suns' upset win over Illawarra, a major boost in the run to the playoffs.
It's a big weekend for nearly 60 members of the youth movement. There's various forums to attend with guest speakers including Youth Affairs Minister Virginia Chadwick and a dinner tonight addressed by former Liberal leader John Hewson. Debates on a number of policy issues, foreign aid, paid paternity leave and the healthcare system, to name a few, will determine the movement's position, which is then passed on to the Liberal Party's Federal Council.
We make representations. We're essentially a lobby group within our party for youth views, and we do have impact.
The Young Liberals say it's time for decisive action on the controversial issue of euthanasia and are calling for changes to legislation.
The issue has to be addressed by government, and it can't just be left to health workers to essentially break the law.
North Nelson Bay in the yellow was 3 points down at the end of the first quarter, but 5 consecutive goals in 15 minutes in the second had them ahead 6-8-44 to 9-5-59 at half-time. They continued on in the same vein in the second half, outscoring Warners Bay by 10 goals to 5. Nelson Bay's Pat White was one of the best on the ground, while Andrew Lenert and Mark Black kicked 13 goals between them. In netball, Warners Bay T&C will play Aquatics in the grand final of Lakesides Association next Saturday. Warners Bay defeated Belmont in the tartan skirts 54-36 at the Belmont courts in this afternoon's preliminary final, after leading 27-17 at half-time. In the Newcastle competition, Gazzers won today's major semi-final against Brewers, while the minor semi was taken out by Marielle and Max. And finally, 150 intellectually disabled basketballers and tennis players took part in the opening day of the Special Olympics New South Wales Championships in Newcastle today. All will be attempting to qualify for the state team for the National Championships in Perth in November and December.